Hey, welcome to the Ordinary Black Professionals. I'm Nicole,
And I'm Stefan.
and this week we're talking about what consultants do. It feels like a little bit of a loaded question. A lot of the times I feel like when people ask me what I do and I start to explain consulting, their eyes glaze over and they no
Yeah,
longer kind of have any interest
yeah,
or can follow the conversation.
most of the time.
Yeah, that tends to be how it is most of the time. Or I struggle to find the words to really actually explain what it is that I do.
Mm,
Because it is so different to what other people who aren't in consulting do and like how they kind of navigate their jobs.
yeah, yeah. The type of work that we do is quite different sometimes compared to what people would do in their traditional positions in finance or insurance or whatever they might
Marketing,
do.
whatever it is, yeah.
So, the concept of sort of how we go about what we do is slightly different. So maybe we can sort of explain that today.
Yeah, definitely. And I would even say that like friends and family probably still don't understand what we do.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely in my case,
I'm pretty sure I've had people who I've been friends with for years, turn around and say to me, "What exactly do you do again?"
yeah.
Um, so
So we can
yeah.
start off with sort of what is a consultant? And I would say that's someone who sort of provides professional expertise or advice to a business, could be an individual as well in a particular field. So that field could be in technology, insurance, finance, banks, strategic, um, uh, change, things like that, right? And and to help that person or business achieve their goals. Um, and consultants like us, we can work for professional services or consultancy firms. We can also work freelance or as an internal consultant for a company that you currently work for. So even if that company is not a consultancy firm, they can also have consultants inside that help in providing that professional expertise and advice.
And I would say a consultant is in a couple of sentences, we help businesses solve problems. We
Yeah,
help them solve their problems. We can help them improve their processes, implement new technology, understand what their efficiencies are in the business. Any of those three things, but essentially it is helping them solve any problem that a business may have. And then, as Stefan said, it can be in a range of different industries. I think um, we probably worked in at least combined together maybe 5 plus or 10 plus different industries.
yeah. Ten's a lot,
Ten,
but yeah.
ten's too many.
10, 5 plus is definitely, I'm sure 5 plus is
Keep the 5 plus.
yeah.
So yeah, and the thing is with the work that we do, so we're helping businesses solve their problems, we're working in different industries, and it tends to be, if I think about kind of our day to day, what a consultant would do, I would say that every day is different. So
Definitely.
it can be like a 9 to 6 start. So contractually, I work 9 to 6.
Yeah.
I don't have that 9 to 5 life, unfortunately. I never get home in time to watch the 6 o'clock news. That's not my life. I know I have friends out there who finish work at 5 and is able to get home to watch the 6 o'clock news. That has never been me. Usually I'm in companies where I can see the 6 o'clock news on the TV screen, but I'm still at work
Yeah.
working.
In the office. Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah.
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 So yeah, I work contracted to work 9 to 6, but it could be that I work longer, just depending on what's required from the client and what stage we're in. If I'm in a really busy stage, then I could be working 9 to 6, 9 to 7, 9 to 9, 8 to 9. Just depends what it is, and it
7
also
to 7.
7 to 7 depends where the clients are as well and where they're based. If they're based in the States, you're working, longer hours. If they're based in China, let's say, your day may, start a little bit earlier. So yeah, the lengths of time is different. But I think Stefan, where you are, your day's
Yeah, I work 9 to
more
6
nine to
as well.
six, not necessarily working
Yeah.
overtime.
Yeah, because in my current position, I'm probably that example of what I was saying. I'm a consultant inside of a company
Yeah.
that's not a consultancy firm, and so I'm helping them and their customers make changes and provide that expertise in particular areas. And yeah, I work sort of more 9 to 6. But again, it does change. Like if I do have a customer who is in a different time zone, then I'll have to work a bit earlier or later based on
Yeah.
that. Sometimes I can make up the time, so I'll finish a bit earlier or start a bit later or something like that. But yeah, you can work overtime in the industry quite often. Um, but yeah, that's quite normal
Yeah, that
in the
is like
industry.
very normal.
And I
Uh,
think it's at different rates as well. It's at different rates. Like how overtime you work is different for different people on different projects. And
yeah, because some people just love to work over like more hours, and they think that
oh yeah,
quantity is better than
oh
quality,
definitely.
and they don't know how to manage their time.
At all.
So whereas you can bang out a piece of work in 2 hours, that person can't, struggles to manage their time, or for whatever reasons, they don't manage to get the work finished in 2 hours. So it ends up taking them 4 hours, which then means they have to, extend the length of their working day.
Mm,
Um, so yeah, and probably important just to say here, like I work in a consultancy. So I
consultancy firm.
yeah, a consultancy firm. Yeah. I'm not like in Stefan's position. And then so every day differs. I don't think I have any days that are the same. I might be doing similar-ish activities, but the day itself is quite different. And that's because, we've got different meetings that have different emails that pop up, different activities and priorities that a particular day will have. I know some of my friends, they will kind of get up in the morning, they'll go to work, and they have to fill in or have to perform three specific activities, and they have to perform that every 2 weeks or every day or every month or something like that.
Mm.
And I would say that in consulting, there's not always an activity that you have to
You
perform
know what?
every day.
What I would say is that there's not some of these jobs you are given specific responsibilities. Like if you're a payroll admin person, then you add new people on, you
Yeah,
take people who have left off, you do the payroll at the end of the month. It's always the same spreadsheet, it's always the same process, sort of thing. And anything other than that is sort of conversations outside of whatever people may talk about. But in our job, there's no specific responsibilities that we have. It's sort of just to be responsible for anything and everything that may turn
come
up,
our way.
right?
Anything and everything that may come our way.
And that's why every day is different
Yeah.
and every project we do is different. So,
And do you know why every day is different as well? Because of
yeah,
the client.
yeah,
Because so much of all of our work is driven essentially by someone else, by another organization who's telling us what direction we should do or what piece of work we want to deliver. That therefore means that we are in control of our work, but also not at the same time. Because if the client kind of says on Monday we want to go in, direction A, and then by the time it gets to Wednesday says, oh, now we're going to go into direction B,
you have to
that
change
immediately
everything you're doing.
changes
Yeah,
all our direction, all our work, all our activities. So we don't always have a strong steer on the activities and the work we're performing, because ultimately the client drives a lot of that.
mm,
So I think that also means that makes our days kind of quite different as well.
yeah, yeah. There's never a dull day.
Never a
Never,
dull day.
never a dull
Well,
day. Not for me.
I can't I disagree with that. Some days can be dull. Not that they're not event, like, I've had days before where I'm back to back in meetings, and it's been a very boring day because you're just sitting there on calls all day. Um, but yeah, every day is different.
So let's talk about how we go about doing this. How do we go about um, helping businesses through change as a consultant and helping them achieve their goals? First, we'll start off with sort of projects, right? We do this all through projects. So we start a piece of work with a customer or client, and we go through certain stages that are sort of the usual stages we go for every client, and that's sort of the universal way we do things, right?
Yeah.
We usually start off with scoping. I mean, first we have to sort of sign a deal with a client and say, look, we're going to come and work for you, right? We're going to come and do this piece of work for you. That deal will usually not be very specific on what we're going to do, but it's going to sort of say roughly, we're going to help you implement a system to deal with X problem that you have,
Yeah.
right? Um, and then we have to scope that, right? And that means we have to sort of decide by talking to the customer, by talking to all the stakeholders, we have to scope all the things that need to happen in order for your problem to be resolved,
Exactly.
right? Or not necessarily a problem, but whatever you want to achieve to be achieved,
Yeah.
right, in the best way. So, um, and a lot of the time, there's sometimes, right, customers know exactly what they want straight away. They're just like, I want um, a website to get more customers in my business, and I want you to make that website. And so we made the website. We may say a few extra things like, okay, you got the website there, sure, that's a good idea, but how are you going to drive people to that website? How are people going to find it? How are people going to find the experience? Are they going to stay when they come? Things like that. We start asking those questions and we start scoping out more and more bits of information. Sometimes clients they say, I've got this problem, I don't know how to fix it. Um, I think I think I can fix it over here with this solution, but I'm not sure. And then we come in and we do a full analysis and we scope out, right, if you want to solve that problem, you have issues over here, over here, over
Yeah.
here. You need this solution over here. If when you put all that information together, this is the list of items that we need to solve that, and how much time it's going to take, the effort it's going to take, the number of people,
Yeah.
the cost, and what it's going to take. Because a lot of customers, right, a lot of clients think we're going to come in and solve all their problems,
Mm.
but they don't realize that sometimes we're going to come in and tell you to solve your own problems.
Yeah. Yeah.
So um, we come in and sometimes we say, you've got a problem over here, but I can't magically make stuff happen for you. You've got to change the way your business operates.
Yeah.
You've got to change the way your people work if you want your problem to be resolved. You've got a process here that just doesn't fundamentally work that you've been using for the last 20 years,
And you know what?
but it's no good.
It's funny to say that. One client that I was in, um, that I did some work for, they wanted to map out what their processes were. So they wanted an understanding of how they currently do this particular activity. So they wanted us to kind of map out their processes. And what we, after the engagement was finished, one thing that we realized is exactly what you said. For them to have real change in the company had to make um, fundamental changes on the way they operated, the mindset, the culture,
Mm,
and all that other stuff. So it was all well and good us mapping out the processes and coming up with new ways that this business can operate and become more efficient. But essentially, if the people aren't going to change and if the mindset is exactly the same and if the culture is a particular way, it doesn't really make a difference because there's only so much you can do. So yeah, that's so true that sometimes you do need, sometimes our clients do need to change fundamentally how they operate, to be able to, for us to kind of give them the best results that they can get.
yeah, so and that's part of the discovery piece of work that we do. We
Yeah,
have to go in and find this information that they're not going to tell us just from their own mouths.
yeah, exactly.
Because they don't
They don't
necessarily
know it.
know.
You don't, classic saying, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And it's a blind spot. And sometimes it takes someone who has that outsider perspective to come in and be like, oh, actually, this can change, we can do this even better. Because when you're in it so much, it's hard to get that objective view.
Yeah, so that's all part of the scoping work, and part of the scoping work, out of it will come what we call a statement of work. which is a document. It just lists out to fulfill our contract with you, we're going to take this much time. We're going to need this much people and effort and cost and all that stuff. And we're going to do X, Y, Z list of things. And maybe in the statement of work as well, it will contain information saying we also need you to provide us things,
Yeah.
right? And
So
we also need you to make changes in your specific areas and for you to bring your people to the table as well,
yeah.
so we can all work together.
And also in the statement of work or the SOW, we'll also outline the approach that we're planning on taking, what resources we're planning on using. So it could be the case that we're going to bring on external
Yeah,
partners that we work with. So if you're building a website, for example, and you need an external party to do the testing, you may be like, well, we're going to work with this particular partner who works with testing, and they're going to come in and they'll do that, provide that testing element. So the statement of work SOW will outline the different partners that we'll work with, and it also will call out any assumptions that need to be made as well. So
yeah.
we assume that
It's very important to
we
call those
it's very
assumptions.
important to correct the assumption. So an assumption could be we assume that we will be able to speak to the head of technology on a regular basis, and that person will be able to give us the requirements needed to build the website.
But also, the assumptions link back to the top of the document, which is going to say like how much this is going to cost and how much people we need and how much
Oh,
time
yeah,
it's
of
going to take.
course.
Because in the assumptions, we're going to say things like, I assume that the process B that you told me is absolutely perfect and nobody is going to change it at all,
Yeah,
is going to stay unchanged. And I'm going to make that an assumption, right? The moment you change it, the whole scope of our project
changes.
changes, right?
And
And that's going to be more time, effort,
yeah,
and it's going to cost more.
yeah, could
So,
be more
so now
people,
we need
whatever.
to a revision to the statement of work,
Yeah,
right? Because that assumption's been broken.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, very important information there.
So once the SOW and statement
So,
of work
yeah,
is
they'll
signed,
sign that. Yeah.
what happens next?
Um. So now it's time to sort of start getting the work done. And first thing we need to do is onboard our team. So there will be before we do the scoping, there will be a small team who came in and did the discovery piece of work and did the statement of work. But now we know exactly what we need to do. We need to onboard the rest of the consultants from the firm, not all of them, but as many as we need with the specific skills that we need, and start onboarding them into the project. And that just means they need to come in, they need to meet the team, meet us, the consultants, because when I say meet us, you'll think they're from our firm and they'll know who we are, but not necessarily true. Because every project we work with different consultants from our own firm, and we necessarily not we haven't worked with them before.
Yeah,
So they have to meet us, they have to meet the customer, the client, and talk to them and build a relationship. And they need to get all their paperwork in order. So all the paperwork that says, right, you work over here, this client, the money and all that sort of stuff, and we need to get access to the client systems. The client needs to give us access to their building, laptops, any other information or things we may need to basically do our jobs. And sometimes as well, we work on the clients in the clients' buildings, so they need to give us a place to sit.
which doesn't always happen.
Doesn't always happen, but
Most of the time, it doesn't happen.
I've been given places to sit
So you're
most of the
so
time.
so so you have to remember, right? You could be walking into a big organization, and um, I don't. I'm just gonna pick you could walk in a big organization, and all those employees there obviously have somewhere to sit. So they've got a desk, they've got a laptop, they've got a chair, all that good stuff. Now you have 30 consultants coming in who are now going to be working with that company who all require a place to go, a place to permanently, be located in for the next, what, 3 months, 12 months, year, 2 years, however long the project lasts. Um, and from my experience, what sometimes happens is a few things. You either don't get somewhere to sit, so they the client will say to you, well, you can come in to the office, but you can only come in twice a week or three times a week because we can't physically, we don't have anywhere to put you all. So we have to kind of be flexible and how we come in. So that will either happen. B, you are able to, they will kind of facilitate you, and you have got somewhere to sit, but you're not sitting somewhere that's very comfortable. So you're sitting on stools
Oh,
or kind of breaking your back because you don't have a proper like desk set up.
yeah.
Or C, what can happen is that actually there is nowhere for you to sit, and so therefore you are working either from home or from your
From your own firm
from your own
office.
firm office, yeah. Or actually D, what's happened quite recently to me is most of my, the client that I was in um w- was recently working with, they were all based elsewhere. So they weren't based in London. So actually, or even in the UK. So there was nowhere for me to kind of go and work with them because they all worked in a different country. So therefore you aren't going into their office and working with that client face to face.
I've also had the situation where they give you a place to sit, proper desks
Hmm.
and proper chairs, but it's like three people to a desk.
Oh, so you all cram up on one desk.
Yeah. So this the desk, yeah, it's pretty cramped. Three people to a desk in a row. It's like, yeah, really, really close together.
Yeah.
Really uncomfortable.
I remember one particular client saying that we could not come in on a Friday
Did they give a reason?
because there was enough seats.
Oh, because all their employees come in on Fridays.
Yeah. So it meant that we always got to work from home. And as I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but I'm absolutely pro working from home. So for me at the time, this is obviously before COVID and everything, but so I absolutely loved it. So it wasn't a problem to me to work from home on a Friday. So yeah, so when you do all the onboarding, you get all your laptop, you've got access to the building, hopefully you've got somewhere to sit, all that good stuff. Then the next stage is implementation.
Yeah, so it's time to actually
Get down and
s-
dirty.
get this scope delivered. And so all the things that we said we were going to do, we have to start initiating that and working through it, basically. And we have got a big team of people, so you just split up the work in your teams. You keep regular meetings, updates, and just sort of keep a status going of all the different bits and pieces that you're implementing. And it rarely goes smoothly.
It rarely goes smoothly. And again, it's kind of what I said earlier around one of the reasons is that a lot of your work is dictated by someone else. So the client could decide to change the steer of direction last minute, or um we anticipated that it was going to take 5 days to deliver a new functionality on the website, but actually now that we start building it and designing it, it's now taking us 15 days. So all of that stuff changes the direction, it changes the priorities, and it can make for lots of bumps along the road. And not necessarily things being as smooth sailing as you would like it to be. It could also be the case that, when you first kind of scoped out the work and had the SOW, you thought that you only needed the team to have 10 people, and then actually now you've come to implementation, you're like, oh shit, we need to have 15, 20 people to be able to deliver the scope of work that we need. So all of these different kind of changes and challenges can make implementation at times, that delivery phase, really challenging and quite difficult.
Yeah, yeah. It can be, well, I think it's the most difficult
Yeah, it can
time,
be the most
but
stressful time, especially on the lead up to the to go lives as well. So
if you're
go
doing the
lives,
technology delivery,
yeah,
you do it, and everything has to essentially go live once you deliver something that's brand new. If you're delivering technology that's brand new, like a website that didn't exist before, or even you're replacing something that did exist with
yeah,
something completely brand new, you have to launch it, and that launch day, and the weeks after it are very
Very,
bumpy. I don't
very
think,
bumpy, very stressful.
yeah,
And you said the weeks leading after it, but it's also the weeks
before.
coming up to it as well. Yeah, before. Very, very bumpy and very challenging at times as well. I think what's also important to note here is with the go lives, because they can be so challenging and they can be so kind of stressful as well at times, that it's 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 a time when the project team can actually band together a lot more than they usually would.
Yeah,
Because for
that's true.
sometimes, I don't know what it is, but people bond over bad circumstances.
Well, I would say bad circumstances. It's just like the most challenging time, and you really pull together, and that's probably when you become a team more than ever before,
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
and you're
Because you
all
need
working towards the same goal,
common goal, yeah.
and and sometimes a lot of the politics have gone out the window at that time. It's just straight, we need to achieve this,
Yeah,
and we all know the direction we're going in, and everybody's helping out. And
yeah.
those are definitely the bonding times,
Bonding, yeah.
and you get yeah, I think you always remember those times.
You do. And everyone mucks in. So regardless of your level or what your expertise is, if you need someone who can help out with testing at 5 p.m. in the evening, and you have no testing experience, but someone needs it, you just hop on and you help and you test. Like everyone just mucks in and gets some of the job. And I would say this is the time before the go live and afterwards, where those hours are crazy. You're working weekends, you're working long hours, you're working bank holidays. You're just trying to get it over the line so we can go live with something.
Yeah, well, I don't think it necessarily has to be like that, but that can be the case a lot of the time. Yeah,
Have you ever been on a go live project where you haven't had to work extra hours?
I've been on one where I haven't had to work weekends.
Not okay,
Um,
fine. You don't work weekends for extra hours during the week.
yeah, I mean, I've worked late. Yes,
Yeah.
I've worked late. But I
So
mean, no, I mean, I think you're always probably going to work a bit late. But yeah, weekends and like working up to midnight and stuff like that. I don't think it has to be that way.
it doesn't have to be that
I
way,
have done those, but
but I've done those as well. I don't think it has to be that way, but I feel like more often than not it is that way.
yeah, I think when it's gone that way, something has gone wrong
Something's
along
gone
the
wrong.
way, and it's too late to fix it. And
Mm.
yeah, you just got to make something work. So
One thing to say about working late though is I would say that in consulting, it's very much like it's very much the expectation that you do work late. Like even if you speak to people who are not in the consulting industry, they know that consultants work long hours. It's kind of like when I think of doctors. I don't know, even though I'm not a doctor myself, I just know doctors work long hours.
yeah, I would say
It's
that
kind of like,
about
do you know what I mean? It
like
has that like from people who are not in the profession industry,
yeah,
they know it's just like an area where you work long hours.
yeah,
And amongst other consultants, people just know, oh yeah, like of course you're going to work longer than you're contractually meant to.
yeah,
In actual fact, when I've looked at jobs before, sometimes jobs actually say have to be willing to work longer hours.
yeah. I'm personally I'm always happy in this implementation phase to do that, like when it's around the go live
Yeah, same
and
actually.
the the business end of the project, but I'm not necessarily for doing that throughout the whole implementation phase, right? There's some projects and stuff like that. From when you start, you're not doing 9 to 6. From that first onboarding day, you're working, you
Long
know,
hours.
9 to 9 every day, all the way up until you leave. And I think that is completely unnecessary, personally.
Well, do you know why that I think happens at times is because the SOW was
The SOW was, yeah,
just didn't
not
said that you
properly
needed
done.
5 resources, 5 individuals, and then actually you needed 10.
Yeah, and so you're doing
So you're
double
always,
work.
yeah, so it's just climbing up a hill.
Yeah, which is why there's assumptions and SOW and getting the right amount of estimation on how much time and effort it's going to take is very, very important
Yeah, very.
because that will lead to the project starting off good or starting off very bad. So after this implementation phase, we've delivered the work, and typically it's time to sort of hand everything back over to the client and say, hey, we've delivered this piece of work for you. Now our contract is up, and we're going to hand everything back to you in a nice, neat, and orderly state. Obviously, we're going to call that business as usual.
Or in other words, BAU.
Yeah. And so they need to figure out basically how they're going to operate now with these new processes or new technology systems or whatever, their business as usual everyday state. How they're going to deal with the different situations that may occur, those sort of things, right?
Yeah.
So we will do documentation.
We'll also do kind of what worked well. So essentially, it's a way of gathering feedback to understand, okay, so what worked really well during this project, and then also kind of what can be improved in this project as well. And essentially, kind of just following on from what Stefan said, this BAU or business as usual handover stage is making sure that we're leaving the client in the position where they can continue doing the work that we've already been doing as a as the consultants, but we leave them in a good place to essentially continue that work and thrive. So um, it's giving them the tools and the equipment and the skills needed to do that.
Yeah,
And sometimes during this BAU phase, business as usual phase, it is upskilling the client on
yeah,
how to do certain things. So if you've just kind of implemented this new technology and they have absolutely no idea how to manage it if something goes wrong, it could be sitting down and upskilling the client on how to use Salesforce or how to use, I don't know, G Suite, or I'm trying to think of something quite basic, but how to use Google Hangouts or Teams or something like that. How to use a simple functionality, what to do if something goes wrong, training people up to be system admins so they can give you logins into the system, or they're the go-to person if something the system crashes or something like that. So um doing all of that stuff, and then yeah, and then as Stefan said, having the documentation
yeah,
so it's clear and easy. One thing I would say with the documentation though um is like I guess a bit of a tip is walk the client through the documentation. Don't
validate it with them.
assume, validate with them. Don't assume that if you send them an email, please see attached this documentation, they're going to click the attachment and read it. And if they do read it, that they're going to understand it. And if they don't understand it, that they will then follow up with you. Don't make those assumptions. I find what's always really good is just to have like a quick handover meeting with them so you can walk them through the documentation step by step and they're really clear and confident in it. So when you as a consultant, as the individual rolls off the project, or as if the whole team rolls off the project, you feel comfortable and confident that the client is just happy with the documentation and know what to
Yeah.
do.
One of the things that makes you a good consultant is knowing your client.
100%.
Yeah. If you know
100%.
them, then you would know that, hey, every time I send a document to this guy,
They don't
he's
read
not
it.
going to read it.
You're not going to read it.
So don't send a document to him.
It's better if I set up a
Yeah,
meeting.
maybe, or this is the type of person who really likes face-to-face contact, who really likes me to walk him through something, to present to him or her, and and then therefore you should do that because
Yeah.
you know what they like, that will please them, that will um, make it easier for them to sign off the work that you've done, and yeah, just make your life easier.
Yeah.
So that's one of the, I mean, that's also just part of listening as a consultant, one of the top
But do you know
skills.
what? But what I find sometimes happens is, you've worked with this client, that client, this client, that client, and you just get into a habit of
Doing the same thing.
just doing the same thing. Yeah. So when you come across a client or an individual who, wants to read a document offline and, not really have like a call or whatever,
Mm.
you'll just put one in because that's what you've done with XYZ client
Well, that's what I
time and
say.
time again. But
That's why the top skill of a consultant is to know your client because you
I
shouldn't
feel
do the
like you
same
have
thing
to
for
be
every
quite
person.
emotionally intelligent as well. And what I mean by that is um, picking up on those subtle like cues on what people like and what people don't like, so you're able to make informed decisions. Because the client, when I work with my different stakeholders, I wouldn't say that they will say to me, some of them will be like, oh, well, I never read. So, like, Nicole, if you send me this email, I'm probably not going to read it because I have 1,000 emails in my inbox. But so that will be quite direct. So I know, okay, if I want to walk that person through something, or give that person, like, I need to sit them down, walk them through it, have set up a meeting, do all that good stuff. But there's other clients who won't be as explicit as that, and they'll just be like, yeah, they just won't be that explicit. They won't clearly say how they like to work.
Right.
So you either have to pick that up through working with them, talking with them, whatever, or what I found quite helpful and useful is just to put a time in their diary. And I think this can go with anyone. I think this just goes with any industry that you work in, to be honest. Put time in people's diary and say, how do you want to work? How do you like doing things? And let's do it that way. And I think that can work as well if you've got a manager relationship or whatever. You can tell your manager, well, this is how I like to work. This is how I like to receive feedback. This is how I like to, don't put a meeting in my diary for 9 a.m. because I'm not at my best at 9 a.m. Put it in for 9:30. Things like that, so you can get the best out of people. You can give that information to the client or to your manager, whoever, and then you can ask for that back.
Yeah,
Get that information back, because
that's true.
it's such a big one that we just work with people. We just absolutely no regard to how they like to do things.
Yeah, because
Um,
in our job, it's important for us to get the best out of people,
yeah,
especially
exactly.
when they don't work for our firm, they work for the client. So you're you need to do things in a way to sort of get their attention,
Yeah.
you know, yeah, just like you mentioned, really, you can do that through a meeting like that. That will work. Yeah, that's
Mm,
great.
I agree. I'm just thinking right now, like I absolutely, I'm the opposite of someone who likes to have someone walk me through a deck. I'm more like, well, I'd rather spend my own time reading it so I fully understand it, put in my comments there, and then we can set up a meeting. But if someone just walks me through a deck in an hour, I'm not going to have the
Yeah, that's
time
not
to
useful to me either.
just not to digest the information. So for me, that's not how I like to operate and
Mm.
work.
But some people love that.
Some people love that.
Yeah.
Love it, especially if you're
But
time
you keep
poor,
saying the word deck. What's a deck?
a deck. So of course all these consulting terminologies. So a deck is just a PowerPoint presentation. So it's a bunch of slides, essentially, which is cool, which we in the beers call deck or pack. Can be
Yeah,
referred to as a
they like
pack.
to call it a pack.
It's not a pack of dogs. It's not a pack of wolves.
A pack or a deck.
It's not a deck of cards. It's just a PowerPoint
I just
presentation.
call it a presentation or a document.
Really?
I don't call it a deck.
You don't call it a
I think
deck
that's a weird
or a
word for it.
pack?
I think that's even weirder. A pack.
Yeah, I call it a deck.
I might call a pack if it's many of them. Like I've got like lots of different presentations and they all are
Into
related
one.
to a single thing
No.
and it's a pack of
I mean,
documents about something.
that makes sense. How you just described it,
Yeah,
that makes sense.
but they
That
call
that's
one
a
document a
logical way
pack.
to do. No, but when I say pack, I'm talking about like one
Yeah,
deck that may explain, like, I don't know, how to play FIFA, and it's got like 15 slides.
yeah.
That's like one pack. So what we'll have to do throughout is just call out when we're using like consulting terms.
Mm.
And I did use one earlier, which was resource,
Oh yeah,
when it comes down to someone joining a project. So I have to step in here if I explain this a bit wrong. But basically, um, because you're an individual and you move around different projects, how you're often referred to as being a resource.
yeah. Some people absolutely don't like that.
Some people don't like that. For me, couldn't care less. That's what it is.
Well, I don't know.
I wouldn't be. I'm not offended if someone refers to me as a resource. Um, so instead of kind of, I guess what it does, it takes away the
The human
human factor from it.
element
So instead of it
and
being
the
like,
individuality
yeah,
and yeah,
yeah,
the skills.
it can do that,
Yeah.
yeah. So instead of it being like, okay, well, Nicole was going off to this particular project, it'll be like, well, we just need a resource, an individual, a consultant who can do this particular piece of work.
Mm.
So I did use that earlier, and that's essentially what it is. It's just referring to an individual. And then, yeah.
And how they measure that too, they measure resources using FTEs, which
Oh,
means
yeah.
full-time equivalent. So one FTE is one person working full-time, which is 9 to 6.
Yeah.
Right. So if I say I need 7 FTEs, then I need 7 people that work full-time, 9 to 6.
Yeah.
So if there's 7 people one day, if there's 7 people work one day, they've worked 7 FTE. Get it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, so that's basically the project life cycle.
Yeah. So that's sort of the stages that we go through in general. And then obviously we do this for different clients up and down the country.
Or the
So
world.
all the world, yeah, all the world. Most of the time the country. So so as a consultant, when you look at jobs, they're pretty much all going to say that you need to be geographically mobile.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's and actually what they say is 100% geographically
Yeah.
mobile.
And they pretty much always say 100% because they don't want you claiming, oh, you told me 50% and I work with more than 50% geographically mobile.
Yeah.
Like they want to have the options for you to work 100% away from home, any time of the
Yeah.
year, any day.
And then the reason you will be required to work away from home is if, for example, you're working for a client and they're based up in Scotland and that client wants you there on site with them, then you'd need to commute up to Scotland, whatever, based on whatever the project needs you. But you'd have to um, travel up to Scotland and be there on site. And so you'd be essentially away from your London base or wherever you're based from.
Yeah.
Um,
And most of the time you will get a hotel to stay in at the
Yeah,
very
you'll
least.
get, yeah, so
You'll
it's
get
not, you're
breakfast
not
and dinner paid
paid
for you.
for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not out of pocket because you are required to work outside of your hometown,
Yeah.
wherever that may be. So yeah, the company would pay for your hotel, for your food, for your the train up there or the flight to wherever you're going,
Well, actually, a lot of the
taxis.
time, the consultancy firm get the client to pay for it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
But
essentially,
essentially it's, so yeah, so
essentially
I mean,
that's baked into the cost of you having us come work here.
yeah,
We're going to charge you for our hotel stay too.
yeah, yeah. But essentially, for you as the consultant, it ain't a cost for you.
No.
Um, but yeah, I mean, the first consulting gig that I did, company that I was at, my contract said that I had to be 100% geographically mobile. And at the time when I joined the company in my early 20s, I just signed it and didn't really think anything of it.
You didn't think that was going to be true?
I just thought, okay, yeah, whatever. Whereas now, if I was to move company or whatever, and I said 100% geographically mobile, it would be something I'd have to think about a lot more
Yeah.
because of I have a house, I'm married. Like it's just a much different setup to what it was when I was in my early 20s and I just started out.
When I first started as well, there's a older lady that told me that when you're young, you should just take that time to have the experience of being mobile, to working in these different places, explore, don't hold yourself down to your local area. We're from London, so, London, or if you're from Manchester, Manchester,
Yeah,
don't hold yourself down to those areas. This is time actually you're working for a company and they can send you anywhere. Be open to that.
Yeah,
when you're young.
and you know what?
And
I
I
think that's
understand
pretty
now.
good
Yeah.
advice. Yeah, I think that's fair advice. I think it's coming back to
You also get very good experiences as well because
what.
you're very embedded. Once you're out there working on site, right, and you're um, in the hotel, nowhere close to home, you're fully embedded every day
Mm,
into that work environment, and you'll get to come home on the weekends, sometimes on Fridays, work from your local office on Fridays or something like that. But yeah, you're fully embedded.
yeah,
So everything that's going on in a project, you're just getting rich experience at that time when you work on out of town.
yeah. And I think with anything in life, when an opportunity comes your way, you have the privilege of a new opportunity or new experience. Sometimes you do just have to take it by the hands and roll with it. If you're open to it, I think it's good. And we've both worked on out of town. It's another bit of lingo. Out of town just basically means um, not in not in London. We've worked on projects where we've had to commute and not be in London.
You know, no, what out of town means is not where you are
Actually
contractually based.
based, yeah,
So my contract says I'm based in the London office. So any London-based projects, they're not going to pay for me to travel there or stay there.
yeah,
But any projects outside of my base, which is London, they should um, pay for at least travel. If they're not going to pay for me to get a hotel there, they should pay for my season ticket or whatever to
yeah,
get the
to go
train up and
to
down. You
Surrey
know,
or whatever it is, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Um, yeah, so we've both been on out of town projects, and it's not something that I would rush to do again in my current situation. But there was definitely, the good, the bad, and the ugly with it. It was definitely an experience that I'm glad that I had. Um, I mean, so I was out of town for 6 months, and what I enjoyed about it was the fact that when I did come back to London, it felt like a treat almost. It was like, oh wow, I'm back. I get to see my friends and like get home cooked meals. And that felt really nice and precious when I was back in London, the time that I had. Um, One thing I should note though is actually when I was out of town, I was out of town Monday to Friday. So I actually came back Friday evening and I left to go to where I was Monday morning. So I was completely out of action for the whole working week. And so when I say that my weekend my when I came back to London was so precious, it was because I only had 2.5 days back in London. Um, another thing that was another thing that was good being in out of town was the fact that I this is not work related, but was exercising a lot more than I did beforehand.
Yeah, because you get if you're in a hotel, choose a nice one. It's got a really nice gym.
You have a really nice gym. Not that
Yeah.
I actually went to that gym. I actually to my hotel gym. I actually started training in like another somewhere completely different. So that was and I was doing that 5 times a week. So that for me was great, getting that fitness in, getting in the gains. And another good thing was probably the fact that I got to stay in different hotels and see what they were like and
Mm,
different food and stuff.
yeah.
It wasn't a project that I particularly enjoyed, so that's not going into what I enjoy. It's not going into the good what I enjoyed about.
Yeah. I guess when I first started out, I was excited about all these hotels, you
Oh
know,
yeah,
about I thought it'd just be exciting really. And yeah, it
that's what
was
everyone
it was
thinks.
exciting at first, but not
Novelty soon wears
it
off.
wasn't that exciting towards the end, especially when you realize they don't have many channels on the TV.
Yeah,
And so yeah, just there's that really. I think you sort of covered it all. Trying to think of anything else really.
yeah, it's probably everything.
Yeah, I just think working out of town for me, you get a richer experience, especially if you're younger and you're starting out, um, because of you're embedded. So you're not just embedded, obviously, out there. When you go back to your hotel room, you're going back to a hotel with the people you work with your team. You can eat lunch, dinner with your team.
I mean, and that has its pros and cons.
There's pros and cons. I mean, sometimes you're in it too much. You can ask as well. I'm
See,
just gonna. Well, not ask. It's not. You don't have to ask, but you can say that
see,
I've
this
had
is
enough today. I'm just gonna
I've had
go
enough of
and do
spending
my
all
own
my
thing.
time with you,
And some people do that.
because I think that's the bit. So there's pros and cons with anything, but I think that can definitely for some people be a con because you're spending a lot of time with people who your work essentially your work colleagues, and if you're fortunate enough they can be your friends as well.
Yeah.
But essentially you do your 9 to 6 with them at work already, and then actually no, before you've even gone into the office to your 9 to 6,
You're
you would
having
have had
breakfast with them.
breakfast with them because
Yeah.
you're in a hotel. My experience was I was in a hotel, um and it's not, we're not in like a 500 bed room hotel, whatever. It's a relatively, smallish hotel. We're all getting up at the same sort of time to get into work. So we're seeing everyone. I'm seeing all my colleagues in the morning for breakfast. So we all sit down and have breakfast together. We then all hop in the same taxi and do the taxi commute to work together.
Or
We
train. I
then
used to take. I used to take a train
Oh, did you just a
from the
train?
hotel,
Oh,
like a
ours was just a
one-stop train.
really?
Yeah,
Ours was just a taxi, like a 20-minute taxi drive journey.
that's long.
Yeah, 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 it was long, yeah. And then yes, it's taxi ride over to the office. Then you do your working day at the office. Then you all take a taxi back to the hotel together, and then you all have dinner together. So that's a lot of time.
In my
Uh,
in my opinion, that means you're not working 9 to 6, because if I'm spending all this time with you and I'm not talking, unless you're really friendly with them, you're not talking with them about football or whatever you're interested in. Most of the time, you're talking about work. And you're talking about what you're going to do at work and what needs to be done or whatever. And so you're kind of not no longer working 9 to 6. You're just working full time all the time.
well, that's what ends up happening sometimes with people who are out of town. It just
Yeah,
becomes like so everything
it
just
can be
bleeds into,
overwhelming.
yeah, it
Yeah,
all just bleeds into it because because exactly what you said, because they're not necessarily your friends. So then the only thing you really have to talk about is work. Um, I mean, from my experience being out of town, I was quite clear to separate. Like, I removed myself when I wanted just some time by myself, and because I was kind of weight training in a different building from work, and I had people in the area who I did that with, it very much meant that I had a bit more separation from my work colleagues and from work in itself. And then I would, come back in after doing my training session around, well, no, 7:30, 8 or whatever it was, then go into my room and have my dinner.
yeah. But
Um,
it also can be quite good, like spending a lot of time together, because when you get to that business end of the project, you're bonding a lot more. That camaraderie and being around each other and really fighting through, the hard times when you're out there on out of town. That could be that's a really good experience sometimes, and those are the things that you don't forget.
yeah, they are. They are. I agree, they are.
Yes, you have to be geographically mobile,
Yeah, yeah.
pretty much in
Can be
every
geographically mobile.
consultancy job. But yeah, so that's part of our contracts. But who do we work for? Like, yeah, we
The
do work
client.
for, well, we work for our firm.
Yeah, we work
That's
for our
that. That's
firm.
where our interests are for our firm. Yeah. So even when we hit the BAU stage that we talked about, one of the things that you also talk about in the BAU stage is, oh yeah, so what else can I do for you, client? What else can I help you with? Do you need my help going forward, or do
Yeah, in
you need
case
to
there's
do
any follow-up work.
version 2 of this system that I put in place for you? And
Yeah.
so um your interest is to is for your company that you work for, right? So that's who we work for, but it doesn't feel that way all the time, especially when you're working in the client's place of work. So sometimes it feels like we're working directly for the client. Sometimes, in fact, some people feel that they no longer work for their consultancy firm. They work for the client, and they walk around with the client's colors on, you know, wearing the client's badges and clothes, and really feel they are one of the employees when actually they're not.
Yeah. And it's easily done, as you said before, when you're working out of town and stuff, um, you're not seeing your your company colleagues at all. Like for me, for example, I was out of town Monday to Friday. I saw my client more than I saw my family, and so therefore more than I would have seen my kind of company
Yeah,
colleagues.
and some people, they stop using their company laptop. They start using the client's laptop.
Exactly. So then you're not
And
getting any of the company updates. You're
yeah,
not.
well, they should be checking the emails, but they they
It
fully
just.
feel like they work for a client because they're not even using their own company stuff anymore.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And then there's also the other aspect of when a client gets consultants in to deliver or do a particular piece of work, the expectation of what they can deliver, I feel like it tends to be quite high. Um,
Yeah,
because when you get consultants in, you're bringing a certain level of expertise,
yeah,
a certain level of experience, of knowledge,
yeah,
and a way of working, a structure to kind of bring things together. So that's one reason for the expectations being quite high because of that expertise and knowledge. And then the second reason is because the day rates tend to be quite high
yeah.
depending on the consultancy.
Consultants are expensive.
Consultants are expensive, so depending on how big the consultancy is, it could be anything from £400 a day up to 15 £2,000 a day. So maybe even more, for some, depending on the type of work and the level of experience that consultant brings. So if you kind of scale that up, the work could be hundreds of thousands of pounds, contracts worth a million, over millions of pounds, or tens. It's a lot of money that is being played with here in you. So when you're coming in to work for a particular client, expectations on what you can deliver and what you can do is high. And
Definitely.
that can sometimes bring on a lot of pressure to the consultants to deliver to a high standard and to deliver work quickly as well.
Yeah, yeah. And one of the things that we face when we walk in is politics the
That company,
of that client, and
client's politics.
yeah, and some people don't want us there.
No,
Now, sometimes we've been brought in to fix a problem that Bob created, and Bob doesn't want us here
Bob
to
doesn't want
fix
us
it.
there. Or do you know what happens often or not? Do you know what happens?
Yeah,
We're brought in to work with Margaret's team, but Margaret's boss, Helen, has brought us in. So Helen knows what's going on. Helen's paid the money or whatever.
yeah,
Margaret and her team have no idea until a week before.
yeah.
And so Margaret's like pissed, and her team are pissed because they're like, we work perfectly fine. There's no inefficiencies in our process.
Oh
We
yeah.
don't need any help.
So many people say stuff like that, yeah.
We
But
don't need
yet
it.
we're
We don't
here.
need any help. I only found out a week before that we're gonna have consultants coming in. No one's brought me it. Like no one's brought me into the why the consultants there. We don't have the Margaret and her team's buy-in. So the consultant then, however many people it is, let's say it's five, rock up to work with Margaret and her team, and you're met with complete hostility.
Mm.
Because how would you like it if someone one day everything was fine and a week later someone came in to essentially critique your work?
That's how they feel.
That's how
Well,
they feel.
most of the time, we're not there to critique their
Well,
work,
not necessarily critique, but you're
but
but
I
you're
mean, it's
looking
not
at.
perfect.
It's
Sometimes
not
people have to admit
perfect,
that.
but you're looking at. I don't know. Maybe it is it's not. Maybe critique's the wrong word, but it's almost looking at how things can be improved,
Mm.
which can sometimes look or be perceived as a critique.
I've walked straight in to a client who was very hostile when I showed up. Like they did not want me there. They didn't know what to do, what they wanted to do. They were doing it completely wrong, but they did not want me there at all. And
Yeah.
I had to sort of make it work. I had to be really nice and show that even though you don't like sort of my company or sort of the concept of a consultant coming in, I'm gonna make you like me.
Yeah.
And if they like me, they'll put that to the side.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And
So,
that's why so much of consulting, as you said before, is building up those relationships with people and getting to know people and having that intimate relationship with them.
mm,
Many of the clients that we've worked with, we've still kept in touch with them in one way or another. So yeah, you are building up kind of long relationships with people.
and the stakeholders as well. So inside of, so we talk about the client, right? But the client's not one person. Like you say, there's Helen and Margaret, right? There's two different people in that situation, but sometimes there's many more across the whole business
Yeah.
who you have to interact with, and they're called stakeholders because they are involved in the process that you're trying to change or implement. So,
But the joke of it is sometimes you may not know who all the stakeholders are. So then
I
you
mean,
you come in now with your team of five, whatever it is,
mm,
and you have to basically be a bit of a detective. So you're like,
definitely.
Detective
Sometimes they
Nicole
know,
going around asking people,
yeah,
okay, so Helen's boss is this person, and then you're there piecing together the map, piecing together the pieces, and you're creating what we call a stakeholder map, or
mm,
and working out, okay, so who is who in the business, what's their titles, what's their responsibility, how much power and influence do they have, and what's the like whose boss is who, and just getting that picture. So when you are wanting to do something, you know who to speak to, you know who the
and who's affected by whatever you're doing.
yeah, that's so yeah, who's affected by the change or whatever it is that you're implementing or putting in place. That's so key as well. Because as much as we talk about, implementing a new system or creating a new process, whatever it is, we also, when we come in as consultants, have to think about who is being affected by the change that we're putting in place. Who's being affected, and how can we support those individuals as well?
Yeah. But typically, there is somebody at the top of the chain,
Yeah,
the person who paid the money or their boss. It could be like a CTO or a very high executive or something like
yeah,
that. And typically, they can have the final say.
yeah,
But you still need to be friendly with all the stakeholders, everybody who's involved, because even one person can really put the brakes on whatever you're trying to do.
yeah. Especially if there's someone with a lot of influence.
Yeah.
They may not have a lot of power in terms of controlling budget and things like that. But if they can influence a lot of people so the morale is down in the team or they're not in favor for this change,
Mm,
that can have a massive impact on the project.
okay. Yeah, let's move on to the bench.
What is the
What's
bench?
the bench? Yeah, so the bench is, so we work for different clients, different projects up and down the country. But there are some times where we don't work for any clients and we just sitting there waiting for our next job to come along, and that's what we call the bench.
What? So you just sit there, wait for your job to come along. Do you get paid? That's literally the
Yes,
first question that I get
you
asked.
get that?
Yeah, when I tell people about the bench, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm not on a project right now, I'm on the bench.
Yeah,
They're like, so I'm so confused. So you sit at home. I mean, this is what they say to
yeah,
me. So you sit at home and you do nothing and you get paid.
that's exactly right.
And I'm like, well, pretty much. I mean, no, we when you're on the bench, you do work, but essentially, I'm not working for a client.
Well, I don't, what, I think there's different things you can do, right? One of the things is do nothing and just wait for the next job to come around. So sometimes in the firms, you have a list of projects that are looking for
People.
resources, right? And they're looking for certain skills. And if you hit those skills, then you'll be put on the list and you can apply, or
How are
someone else
your
will put your name on the
Yeah,
list. And if you get it, then you get that and you'll be off to that client tomorrow, potentially.
bish
Um,
bash bosh.
or even that same day, which I had that before. But
But
whilst
that's
you're waiting and you're applying for these different positions, it's like kind of like applying for a job, but I kind of you do need a CV, but some sort of CV, some sort of list of what your skills are, so
Mm.
they know where to place you. But yeah, whilst you're waiting for that, one of the things that you can do is do nothing. So you could either do nothing in the firm, like in your company's building, and sort of mingle, network, talk to people. Um,
But that's not doing
so,
nothing though.
yeah, okay, that's not doing nothing. That's
But
talking
yeah,
that's
that's
networking.
networking.
Yeah,
But you
or
can
you can also
do.
do nothing at home, which is what I've done in the past. And you can be at home, watch TV. You know, I wouldn't advise this, but some people have done it. I'm going to admit to being one of those people today. Um, and just wait for the call to come,
Wait
right?
for the call to come. I know sometimes when the people do nothing is if you finish a project on the Friday, let's say, you have a week where you're going to be on the bench, but you know that in the following week you're going to be on a project.
Mm,
So essentially, there's not, I mean, we're going to talk through the different things you can do when you're on the bench, but there's not really much for you to do. So you just kind of chill and relax for the week until and get yourself kind of back to a good state before you're not so you're going to be in a bad state, but get yourself prepared and ready for the next
yeah,
project
I think I
that's
would
going to
say the
happen.
model consultant would say what we're saying is really bad. Don't chill. You have so much to do. Do training, whatever. So you can do training, yeah, but I have also sat at home and done nothing and relaxed because I know the storm is about to come.
Yeah, you know it's going to get busy, so you're using that time to recuperate. But then I guess, but you've never been on the bench for like 3 months, for
I
example.
have, yeah,
Have you?
yeah.
Wait, when though? What, when
That
you was a
yeah.
grad? When you
When
were
I first
doing your year
started
in
out,
industry?
I was on the bench for
Doing your year in
a
industry?
couple months at first. Yeah,
Year in industry.
yeah.
But when you were like didn't do year in industry and you were like
I think
a
from
grad,
after my first job, I think I was on the bench for about 3 months as well. Yeah. After that, then I pretty much always got a job after, like, got a next role assigned to me one after the other, always.
so the longest I think I've been on the bench, it's probably like 2 or 3 months. No, yeah, probably about 2 months is the longest I've been on the bench.
Mm. Yeah, and that can feel like a long time. At first, it's a week, and it feels, oh yeah, this is nice, good, taking a relaxing break. And then 2 months comes, you're like, oh, I can't take this anymore.
Yeah. And you have to remember, I know people probably listening thinking, oh, wow, 2 months on the bench, getting paid, great. But you have to think that it's 2 months out of your development.
Yeah,
So it's like you're not getting the experience working with stakeholders, building up your communication skills, present, whatever it is, you're not doing it. And yes, you can do other stuff to help with that. That's all gravy and grand, but you're not building up the skills that essentially that you want to do and that you're getting paid for. So it's not great. I personally don't like to be on the bench for a long length of time.
mm,
Um, that being said, I've recently, in the last year or so, been back to back to back to back on projects, literally finishing on Friday, starting a new project on the following Monday. Um, and that's also not ideal either. So you kind of want to have a bit of a balance
yeah,
of not saying I haven't really enjoyed or loved these projects I have, but like it would have been it is nice to get a balance of kind of that bit of bench time and then the being on the project and being really busy time as well.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. But when you're on the bench, it's not a holiday. You kind of are on the end of the phone at any time, right? They could call you today to come into the office, so you can't think, oh, I'm on the bench. I'm gonna go off to Cornwall today. They could call you into office that same day.
yeah, and actually, if we because Stephanie, you mentioned if you're on the bench, you have the option to do nothing. But in some companies, I think this may be the case of smaller consultancies.
Yeah,
Um, you're building up a lot of the internal functions and doing a lot of internal work, whatever that may be, whatever that looks like for that particular company. So the option of being able to sit there and not do very much is not
It's
actually
not
an
there.
option.
Well, yeah, I agree. That's true. That's
But
true.
it depends
Also,
on
in the
the
large
consultancy that
companies,
you're in.
that's the same in also large companies. You have to do that as well. And so yeah, so one of the things on the bench you do is that, but also BD work. So BD stands for business development, and typically, what that by that they mean win more deals with more clients or existing clients. That's what
Yeah,
they mean. It doesn't really sound like that, but that's what they mean.
yeah. And that can be anything from putting together a proposal
Yeah,
or a bid to say, okay, so, you said that you want this new website designed. Here's how we
yeah,
plan to do that. Here's our
yeah.
approach,
So
our strategy.
typically, the client will send out an RFE, a request for proposals, and that client will have a list of consultancies that they normally work with. They'll send it to all of them, or even just post it publicly, and loads of consultancies will put in proposals, and we'll be one of them. Um, and that's part of the bidding process, right? So we're trying to win that deal, we're trying to win that proposal, so we put in our best proposal. Most likely, we put in our cheapest price or something like that.
A competitive price.
Yeah, or competitive price, but yeah, it turns out to be the cheapest price most of the time. And we put together a solution that will solve their problem as they've written it down,
Yeah.
and and basically the best one wins, or not necessarily the best one wins, but the one that that
Has the most
client
competitive price.
or the one that that client really wants to work with wins. That can be the case too. The client sometimes he's already got in mind exactly who he's going to work with, but he's putting out the RFE anyway just to follow protocol. But yeah, so that's one of the things that you do on the bench. You would do the bidding work, and there's different stages of bidding that you go through, um, and it's a tough process. But at the end of it, if you win a deal, then you've really helped out your company to basically bring in more revenue. And the job of consultancy is just to keep winning bids, keep winning deals, and just keep working on customers and their problems and issues. And yeah, so you just have to keep winning those. And so that's a really important piece of work to do. And I would say you're not on the bench when you're doing that. You're actually, I think most of the time when you're doing that, you are assigned to win that deal, to work on that piece of work. I would say that's not you on the bench, but they will typically pick up somebody from the bench to do it.
To do it. I think again it depends on consultancy. So where I am at the moment, that's not kind of how it works.
Okay. And then other than that, yeah, as you said, develop areas of the company like internally, like I don't know, internal their develop their products that they have or services,
Marketing
marketing,
strategy. If a
strategies.
particular, and again, this may be the case for more smaller companies, but if there's a particular function in the business that needs support and additional help, you may be kind of drafted in to help with that.
Hmm.
Um, if there's a particular campaign going on in the moment at the moment that that company wants to do, you may be drafted in to help with that particular campaign as well.
Mm,
Um, so yeah, it can massively differ depending on the company that you're in and what work is needed at the time. But essentially, it's helping with bits and bobs.
yeah,
What those bits and bobs are can differ, just as I said, depending on what's needed
yeah.
at that particular time.
Hopefully, just building value and improving the company grow and stuff like that.
Yeah. And another thing you mentioned actually, which we haven't kind of talked about much, is the networking aspect of things that you do when you're on the bench as well.
Yeah.
So that can be kind of networking with people in the business, so in the company that you're in, and understanding how different types of consultants work, or it could be networking with people who work in a consulting industry as a whole. So I think there's quite a lot of emphasis on networking,
Heavy
getting out
emphasis.
there, speaking to people,
Yeah.
and things like that. Again, I think it differs on the company that you're in. When I was in a bigger consultancy, there's a lot of emphasis on networking to get your next project.
Hmm.
Now that I'm in a smaller consultancy where everyone knows each other, there's not much of a push for people to network internally because everyone knows each other. There's not much of a driver to do that. But networking in generally, in terms of between people in the wider industry, is very much favored on.
Yeah,
Um, how do you find networking?
me personally.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm really bad at it. I mean,
Don't
I'm the
beat
worst
around the
person.
bush.
I'm the worst person at networking. I don't really enjoy it. Um, it, I think some people are
Love it.
extroverted and they're very good at it and they love talking to new people and meeting new people. I am the opposite of that, and so um, I struggle with that part of it really. And yeah, I've relied throughout my career on the quality of my work to get heard out there for me to sort of be known
Mm,
in some way. But yeah, that's sort of my weakest skill. So yeah, not great at that, but I've tried, and basically sometimes they have networking events, like after work events, where you have
yeah.
little wine and
Canapes.
canapes going around, and everybody's just chatting, and yeah, and people just get to meet people, and you get people's name, and afterwards you email them and say, oh, do you have any, what project are you on, and how's it going, and do you want to have a coffee, and yeah, I just find it all very artificial, but it's just not me. So, what do you think?
Um, I don't mind networking, whether that's in the business or going to events, to network with people. I find that it's very draining. So you have to, I find like it's draining and I feel like it's very much an extension of work.
Yes.
So if I'm finishing work at 6 or 6:30, whatever, and there's a networking event at 7, it doesn't feel like, oh, I'm just going there for like the
Mm.
free wine and the canapes. I feel like it's very much work and I have to be on,
Yeah,
regardless of whether.
but some people see it as like socializing, I think, don't they?
I don't know if people do see it as socializing because it's not. Because it's just not social. Because if you're doing it, if you're socializing with people in your current consulting company, you're networking with people in your consulting company. You're networking for like, I mean, it could just be to see if you could strike a genuine connection with someone who you may be able to kind of, you know, learn from them, their skills, whatever, or as you said, see whether there's a project. But doing that stuff requires a level, like it still requires energy from you and you to like engage and all that other stuff. And if we're doing it outside of work, again, it's like it requires energy and whatever else. I just find that it can be quite draining. It's an extension of work, and also I can see why people wouldn't like it because it's and at times it can be a bit awkward. I've gone to networking events before
It's awkward.
where I'm by myself. I just go by myself, and everyone goes in- with somebody else. So if you're there by yourself, you have to have the confidence
Mm.
and feel quite comfortable to walk up to a group of people and be like, "Oh, hi, can I join your conversation?"
Which is why
And
I
you
feel
may not
like
know any of them. So it's almost like it caters for a particular type of person.
it works for extroverted people. Personally,
Yeah,
I just don't think,
extroverted, confident people.
yeah, and
Well, I don't know. No,
if you're
actually, I
not
shouldn't even
that,
say that because even if you're not extroverted, if you're not, the two aren't linked. You could be confident and not
yeah,
be an extrovert. So
okay,
I
yeah.
shouldn't say that.
But I think even if you're not, I think if you're not extroverted, I just don't feel like it works for you. And yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
don't know.
agree. And feel okay and comfortable just to walk up to strangers and do all that other stuff.
And it to me, it feels like I'm talking to you because I want something from you, and not, if you know what I mean. I want something from you in some ways, and maybe we all want something from each other anyway. But I feel it's very artificial. I don't feel it's natural.
Yeah. And I guess it's how do you strike that organic conversation with someone. I'm just thinking about someone at the moment and they are extremely extroverted and they're always talking about the importance of networking and how to network and all this other stuff. And I just feel like sometimes when they speak, they are because they already are so extroverted and because they already absolutely love speaking to any and anybody at all times.
Mm.
For them, the idea of networking is like, oh yeah, this is like fine, I want to do this, but it's not necessarily being mindful of how people are different and how I'm a firm believer that not everything is for everybody.
You know what? Maybe
And that's something that that may not necessarily be for all different types of people.
and maybe it is the case when you really look at the people we work with, consulting as a whole, there's a lot more extroverted people in the business, maybe.
Yeah, probably.
And it's a whole industry full of extroverted people. And if you're introverted, then you're the anomaly. Maybe that's the case.
Maybe. Yeah.
But we are here. I'm introverted, and I made it work for me somehow. But I think one of the cons sometimes of there's extroverted people and stuff like that is, as I said, one of the skills that's important is listening, listening to the client and the different stakeholders and what different people are looking for, and making it work for them and stuff like that. And sometimes if you're really extroverted and you're the one who really presses the issue and you're in people's faces always speaking, you're not doing the listening.
But I don't
And
I
it's not
disagree with that
necessarily,
because I don't think extroverts don't listen. I
no,
think
that's not
it's
what I said. It's not that extroverts don't listen, it's that that can be the case for some people. I've
but I
seen
think
it the
with
case for some
extroverts
people.
and introverts is more of an energy thing. So I
That's
would
true.
say that I'm more of an extrovert because I get energy from
Yeah, yeah.
like in social settings, I get energy from other people. So they almost like power me up.
Yeah,
Like,
but I mean, I don't want to make networking a negative thing for
no,
people.
no,
I mean,
I
I think
think it
if
just
you've not
depends
done it
on.
before and it's something that you're gonna do, I mean, it's a good experience. Do it with your extroverted or introverted, and some people really enjoy it. It's just not for me personally.
I
But
think
it's actually very important, and you will actually get farther in your career much faster if you're very good at it. Just before we move on to another point, we talked about internal work and developing areas of the company before. One thing we didn't mention is that you can do that on the bench, but a lot of the time you also do it whilst you're
that's a
also
good
on
point.
client work.
Yeah,
So you could be doing your client work day to day and driving that project and trying to get to the deadline date, delivering everything that they ask for, and at the same time, you have to do work to develop areas of your own company,
yeah,
which could be all the things we already mentioned, and just means that sometimes they call it side of desk work,
yeah.
and you don't get like extra time or anything to do
Or
it
extra pay.
or extra pay.
It's not pay's important, guys. Pay's important,
But yeah, it's just something as well that we have to do, and so
and it's hard.
it's
It's hard
to juggle it all.
to juggle it. It's hard.
Mm,
Um, I'm a consultant at my company, and I'm also the diversity and inclusion lead. And to juggle both roles and both activities, it's hard.
mm,
Just facts.
yeah. So the probably one final point is meetings. We, I guess, as
Have
part of our
so
job,
many.
we have so many, right? And I guess sort of in a traditional sort of job, maybe in the specific role that you've been hired to do, you would have scheduled meetings that you have every day, or one-off meetings always talking about the same type of subject. But our meetings could be about different things any day, every day, and we also have the scheduled ones, right? And so basically, we just have a lot of meetings. But one thing to mention about meetings is we have meetings and we have workshops. Maybe slightly different, the two slightly different things. But yeah, meetings are sort to talk about a subject and talk about a specific issue or something like that, or a regularly scheduled one like regular
Team
weekly
catch up.
update, team catch up, client catch up. Make sure you're always keeping them up to date so they feel like they're in the loop and feel like everything's going smoothly. Um, that sort of thing. And we also have workshops, which are sessions, I would say, that we set up to talk through like concepts and plans and probably what they want to do, like the work they want to carry out and plan it through and things like that. So we have those workshops, and they can last. They're not just like a meeting is like an hour, but a workshop could be
All day.
a full day
It
or
could
2 full days or
yeah,
even a
or a
week
week, or even 2 weeks.
could be 2 weeks. But if it's 2 weeks, then that's a serious workshop.
Well, the client that I've been on projects where it's been 2 weeks worth of workshops.
Yeah, and that's typically you're sat
Full
in a
day.
single room over a full day. It's like sort of a boardroom sort of setup.
Yeah.
A big table in the middle. Everybody sat around the table, and you're just working through systematically.
Whatever it
And
is.
and our job as a consultant is to manage the whole meeting, to get
Facilitate
the
the
information out,
conversation, yeah.
facilitate the
Get the
conversation,
information.
document it, record all the important information that came out, and sort it, organize it, deal with it afterwards, so we can
And it can
make
be
best use of that.
tiring
It's very tiring.
on
Yeah.
workshops. I know the workshops that I've had, and I've done lots of different workshops, but the workshops I've had, it's tiring because you're on your feet all day.
Yeah.
So you're on your feet. So whenever I have a workshop, I'm always like, make sure I wear comfortable shoes, no heels, because you're on your feet all day, and it could be the case that the workshop started at 9, but if you're in that boardroom type setup, you've probably created um like put things in place to get the information out of people. So basically, you can set up the room beforehand.
Hmm.
So you could be in the room from 8, and then the workshop starts at 9. Let's say it finishes at 5 or 6. And then after the workshop ends, you then need to be in the room to debrief with the rest of the team and work out, okay, well, this went really well, this didn't go well. How do we want to change things for the next day? How do we want to take the information that we've got and gather it up and document it, whatever. So the days itself are very long, they're very tiring, and you have to remember if you're doing an all-day workshop, how are you keeping people engaged all day?
Yeah, I start falling asleep in
Because
workshops.
yeah, people fall asleep, people get bored, people are human, aren't they? So it's like if we're talking about something that's not the most interesting thing, it's your job as a consultant to keep energy levels up and keep them high.
Hmm.
How do you do that? So it's being quite creative and thinking of tools. I mean, one thing that I've done before as we'll do icebreakers. So in the morning we'll do an icebreaker. What do you want to get out of the workshop? What do you want to achieve at the end of the day? Have a bit of an icebreaker to get people geared up and in the mood. Then you want to have lunch. Then after lunch, you want to have another icebreaker. And one that has worked particularly well is to get flags from around the world,
Flags.
flags, and have people guess what country this flag belongs to.
Okay, I've not seen that one. That's a good
We've
one. Yeah.
done that. We've also done the one, is it called Heads Up? When you put like a celebrity on someone's head,
Yeah.
and the person who's got the celebrity on their forehead
Yeah.
has to ask questions to guess who it is.
Yeah.
Again, that tends to be quite a good one. I've
But
put
do
like
you
Kim
think?
Kardashian on like a director's head before, just to keep things light. But what's hard is
Yeah.
when you have a workshop, you tend to have very senior people in the
I was
room.
about to say that.
So,
Yeah.
and they're all adults
And
who
so if
are in their like 30s and 40s and 50s. So
and,
sometimes
and
people
60s.
don't, in 60s. So sometimes people don't engage, but you
Yeah.
have to, but you just need someone who's gonna bring the life and bring the energy up. So we can have a little bit of a laugh, a bit of a giggle, and we've got the room filled up in energy. You
Yeah.
just need a few people who are willing to participate. And what you'll realize is once you have a few people on board, the rest of them will be on board too. But it can be difficult because
Yeah.
people,
Because
you
they're
know what I
very
mean?
stubborn.
The
The
director did not want to
directors.
have Kim Kardashian stuck on their face. Do you know what I mean? They didn't really want to do that, but I purposely said you need to do this because I knew if the director's going to do it, it's going to bring everyone else up.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's tricky.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I was thinking. How do you get a room full of executives who are sometimes a lot older
A lot older.
and very stubborn and very, I mean, they are falling asleep in this workshop, right? But they won't admit that if we just loosened it up and lightened up a little bit, then, it will wake everybody up.
Yeah.
They know we could do this, but they're just so boring in some ways.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, they're just not willing to participate in anything like that. Flags around the world sounds like a good idea.
People loved it.
Yeah.
We had to because we had lots of different. I can't remember why there were someone else had like they had played a game before in their personal life and had loads of these flags cut up, and they were the one who's like, oh, we can just use this as a game. And I remember we were doing the work. So we were playing the game, and the clients they were all like, no, no, let's just do like 5 more. They didn't want to get back to do the workshop, so we ended up playing this game for a lot longer. And then towards the end of this particular workshop, another one that we did, and again, I probably suggest doing this more when if you've got a bit of a better relationship with them. But because we had a week-long workshop, towards the end we had quite a good relationship with the clients. But we did two truths and a lie,
Right.
and yeah, that one was quite good as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And as well, what doesn't work? Because they think, let's just take a break. We'll all get a cup of tea, coffee, biscuits. That doesn't work. As
Doesn't
soon as
work.
I've had that break, I'm back at the table and I'm falling asleep again
Yeah,
straight away.
doesn't work. It's good for it just doesn't work. It's good if you can get up and have a walk around,
Yeah.
but essentially it doesn't work.
Yeah.
It does not work. And one thing that I've found quite good with workshops is when you're in the room like a boardroom type setup and people are sitting down there, when the client could be telling you something or what to do and you're trying to draw it out on the board so it makes sense, what can be good is if you just give the pen to them and be like, okay, well, you do it.
Mm,
You and then have them get up, walk across to where you are, the board, and write it down.
mm,
It gets them engaged, it gets them involved, it stands them up, and they're just far more present in what's going on because
mm.
it's tiring. You find it draining because you're trying to facilitate the conversation, and they find it draining because they're listening.
Yeah. And other things you have to do, like split them up into groups,
Groups,
use
post-its,
post-its.
Sharpies,
Yeah. Get them to
stickers.
draw and all
Yeah.
sorts of
You'd
stuff
be
to get
surprised
the
at things.
information out of them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You're trying to extract information, but if you just ask them for it, it's not
You're
coming
not
out,
gonna, yeah.
right?
So you have trust me, consultants have many, many, many different creative ways of getting information from people, and it tends to be, as Stefan said, post-its and Sharpies and stickers and blue tack and
Yeah,
little colored dots and all sorts of things I have done, I'm sure Stefan has too, to try to get information out of people, putting hands up, moving around the room, all sorts of stuff. Because you almost, in a way, you almost revert back to doing like quite childlike type stuff just to
mm,
get information out of people.
yeah. But
Because it's very hard sometimes to get information out of people.
yeah, but that's one type of workshop. Another is when you come as the consultant and you're presenting your solution, your designs, your plans, whatever it is, and so you're one of the um, participators in the workshop. You're not the host. Um, and yeah, you have to be a confident person to present information, to explain it, to answer questions, to be challenged right there on the spot. Um, yeah, those are sort of other scenarios where you could be in a workshop
Yeah,
as well.
100%. 100%.
So I've done workshops in the past where I've had to present and I'm being asked questions and challenged right there on the spot, and every stakeholder is in the room. All the executives are in the room. If I don't respond in a good, strong, you, you know, a confident way
Mm,
that gives a good answer to these challenges that people are giving out, then I've lost my
Of your
I've
credibility.
lost my credibility
And that's so much about what consulting is having credibility and trust with the
and
stakeholder
respect.
and respect and building that up quite quickly
Yeah, and not losing it.
and not
You can
losing
lose
it.
respect and
Credibility in a
credibility and
in a
trust
moment,
in a moment.
but it takes ages to build it up.
Yeah,
And that's when I'm starting a new project and I'm working with clients. The first thing that I want to do is build up a trust and credibility with my stakeholder.
yeah,
And I want them to feel like I'm truly listening to their problem.
yeah.
Um, and and at times being, showing that I'm sympathetic to it as well.
Yes, yes, definitely. Empathy.
Empathy goes a long way,
Yeah.
a very long way. But yeah, those are our different meetings. What I would say with meetings as well, not this is not workshops, but actual kind of meetings that you have. I think one of the things is important to mention is the fact that our meetings can differ a lot in subject matter. So
Hmm.
sometimes you may have to flip-flop quite quickly to different meetings. So you could have a 9 to 10 when you're talking about websites, and then
Yeah,
having a 10 to 10:30 where you're talking about testing. Then
yeah,
you've got a 10:30 to 11 where you're talking about, okay, so delivery. And then do you know what I mean? So the subject matter for all the meetings will be completely different. And
yeah,
you can be back to back in meetings from 9 till 6, maybe have like a half an hour break every now and again, but the topic of each meeting is different. So it just requires you to flip flop all the way, like all the time.
definitely.
And I think what some people find quite difficult when they begin their consulting career is that constantly changing like focus. And I've had people before say to me,
It's hard, you know, it's hard.
it is hard. And I've had people say to me before, oh, I can't. Can we move that meeting to the afternoon so I'm only speaking about, I don't know, websites in the afternoon and everything testing related is in the morning,
Yeah,
so they can just like split and divide their brain.
yeah,
Um, I think for me, I'm okay flip-flopping between topics depending on what the topic is. What I don't like is having half an hour break meetings. I'd rather just do 2 hours back to back one time, as opposed to doing half an hour meeting, then a break, then an hour. Because that half an hour break that I have is like, for me, it's dead time. It's only so much I can do in half an hour. Just just have me back to back solid for 3 hours, 4 hours, whatever it is, and then have me free. I don't like having like blocks of like half an hour
I like having breaks.
of half.
Yeah,
Nah,
because
what
in
do
that
you
little half
do?
an hour,
You can't
that's when I'll
focus
go and
on a
get,
bit of work though.
but that's when I'll go and get my coffee,
Oh
drink,
yeah, if you're going to do
relax,
that.
and I also will, if I have to flip flop my brain, then that's where I will reset at that time and also plan what am I saying in the next meeting. That's what I'll do in that half an hour.
Okay, yeah, that's true. Yeah, that is true actually. Those half an hour meetings can be useful to plan what you're going to say in that meeting. And I think I remember someone said to me, this was like a grad at the time, said to me, "What, you plan for your meetings?"
That is an important point. That is a very
And
important
they were
point.
like,
Yeah,
and I was like, yeah.
you have to.
Because I need to know what I'm gonna say.
Yeah, you have to. Again, it's
And
all
so
about
we've
your
got some structure.
credibility because what? We've been brought in. Why? Because we bring in professional expertise and advice,
Yeah,
right? So if I walk into meetings and I don't bring professional expertise and advice every time, then I start chipping away at my credibility.
credibility. And do you know what? It's the structure as well. If you have a half an hour meeting, I have to remember everyone is time poor. People don't have capacity and like the time to get everything done in their day. That's what it tends to be with the clients we're working with. They're already rammed, or the consultants we're working with, they're already rammed. So if you have a half an hour meeting, the half an hour meeting has to be structured so you can get all the information that you need.
Yeah.
And so it's an efficient use of everyone's time,
So you don't need
not
another half an
so you
hour
haven't
meeting.
need another half an hour meeting. Exactly.
Yeah.
So because of that, you need to plan.
Yeah.
So you can restructure it in a way where you get everything you need to out of it.
And sometimes you, as the consultant, you're just trying to curb the personalities in the room and be like, okay, so can we stop talking about you and your golf course and talk about what we need to talk about here? And can we stop going down this road about you talking about how much you don't like the solution and start talking about this other problem that we're trying to talk about today? Because you can talk about that at lunchtime.
Yeah, exactly. Let's not, what do they call it? Let's not go down rabbit holes.
Yeah,
And oh boy, does that happen, especially in workshops.
yeah, definitely.
It can happen a lot for sure.
Yeah.
So,
So I think we've really covered what we do as a consultant.
yeah,
You feel?
I think so. Don't think there's anything else to add.
No, I think that really covers all the bases. And I
Yeah, I
think I
think,
think anybody who's listened to this podcast should have a good idea of sort of what we do and the difficulties and the good parts and the bad parts and stuff like that. So
yeah.
I hope that's very useful to anybody that's listened today.
So we'll wrap it up there.
Yeah.
Thanks everyone for listening, and tune in next week.
See ya.
Bye. If you have any questions or dilemmas, email us on ordinaryblackprofessionals@gmail.com, or we can be found on Instagram and Twitter @ordinaryblackprofessionals. Also, don't forget to follow us, subscribe, and leave a rating and comment.